The 2010s were undoubtedly the golden age for electronica music. Musicians like Skrillex, deadmau5, and Avicii were at the height of their mainstream popularity, attracting crowds worldwide and garnering large public interest in dubstep and electronic dance music, known as EDM. These titans of electronica culture set the expectations for electronic music and inspired multiple copycat artists like Marshmello and Zomboy, who followed their styles until the sharp decline of interest in dubstep generally. This decline was partly due to a lack of innovation, pigeonholing the genre as rave music, and the absorption of those sounds into the mainstream. From modern pop like Charlie XCX and experimental hip-hop like JPEG Mafia, electronic music has influenced almost all genres beyond the dance floor. In a lot of ways, this mirrors classical music's trajectory as well. Innovators like Bach and Beethoven set the expectations for classical style, just like Skrillex and deadmau5 for EDM, and when these classical giants were followed by numerous, way less talented imitators, it led to a gradual fatigue in the public interest at large. Just as classical went from Baroque to a more romantic style, EDM has also seen a major shift from bassy, dubsteppy sounds to being incorporated into all mainstream pop of today. Like rediscovering a Mozart in modern times, some of the best EDM had to offer in the 2010s has been largely forgotten, discarded and assumed to be just as bland and derivative as his contemporaries. This artist had a much better musical output than he had any right to be. With a discography spanning 34 albums since 2011, multiple aliases spanning genres like metal, Latin pop, and Celtic folk, there's an awesome cowboy steampunk music video attached to him by the guy who made the Kazoo Kid Trap remix.
I like to sing, dance, pretend, and I like to have fun.
An iconic Guy Fawkes mask represents his musical persona, and there's even 2 games based off the lore. An artist with so much output deserves a more in-depth look, and so, without further ado, let's talk about Savant, EDM's forgotten Mozart. Alexander Winter was born in the spring of April 16, 1987, in the small town of Holmestrand, Norway, a quiet and uneventful fishing village off the southern coast. Savant, his most popular alias, comes from the term Savant syndrome, which is a disorder found in neurodivergent people that enables them to be incredibly talented and exceptional in a given domain. For example, music or chess.
Before I was like 16 years old, and I was put in a hospital for a psychiatric hospital. And they did IQ tests and all that shit, and put me through 7 weeks of hospitalization to figure out what the fuck was going on. And then a doctor says no, there's nothing wrong with you. You're just really good at something, but really bad at everything else. And for the first time in my life, there was shining light. It's like somebody coming from the future and giving you a winning lottery ticket number. So I just continued focusing on music more than ever, and progressively tunes turn into bunches of tunes that turn into albums and series of albums, and within trance music, hip-hop, metal, every kind of genre I could cross over into. Collectively, I probably made more than 10,000 tracks to date.
10,000 songs is pretty unreal, but Alex has been producing since 1998, just not under the Savant alias. According to Wikipedia, Savant alone has 34 albums, 20 EPs, 206 singles, 18 music videos, 16 soundtracks, 19 mixtapes, and 45 remixes. What the fuck? I disagree with the album number, by the way. There's probably only about 20-ish true Savant albums. Alex's first Savant album is Niner, releasing in 2011 to, from what I can find, positive reception in Norway. He'd then go on to release Vario in 2012, which, to my knowledge, was his first breakout success. In fact, his most popular and most listened to song on Spotify is Splinter, with over 15 million listens. 2012 in general was Savant's breakout year, with 4 albums being released, and 3 of them being considered his best work. If you've ever heard a Savant song before, it is probably from one of these 3. Alchemist, Vario, or ISM. If Vario was his breakout album, Alchemist solidified Savant as EDM's next up-and-comer. Looking at the timeline from 2012 shows just how insane the release schedule was. Vario released March 21st, and 77 days later, Overworld was released. Continuing the trend, ISM is released 95 days later, another certified Savant classic. Just when fans thought they had received enough, on December 12th, 2012, Alchemist is released, marking the end of an extremely prolific year to be the definitive Savant album. A blessing and a curse for his future discography. Over the span of 266 days, this relatively unknown Norwegian electronica artist skyrocketed into the conversation with the likes of Skrillex and deadmau5. With the release of Alchemist, Savant solidified himself as one of the best and creative house musicians of his era, and continued to prove his worth with his future releases. 2013 was another prolific year with Overkill, Cult, Oracle, and a personal favorite, Heart EP. In 2014, he produced Protos and Zion, 2 massive shifts in his discography up until that point. This would mark the shift from multiple album releases yearly into a new solid yearly release up until 2022. There's been a solid Savant album released every year since 2015. Here's how he's able to produce so much.
In the end run, it's all about the tune. It's about serving a tune, and it's also about like getting the best music possible. And the speed is all nothing to do with the quality. It's all to do with my fucking impatience. I just want the result now. I want to hear it now because it's already done in my brain. Like I'm actually layering probably 60 different memories of music, and that creates a new type of music. And they're all arranged and sorted, categorized automatically by me by key, tempo, and all that stuff. So it just when I want to hear a good tune, I just pick it out of the ether. I call it the ether, because whenever I hear a song, it just sticks there. It might come up in my dreams. So actually all my music is just a recreation of everything I've ever heard. My ultimate goal with music is to try to create every kind of genre into one piece of music, like the rhythm sections, just going through all the African rhythms and jazz, blues, everything you could possibly dream of. That would be like a 4-minute song of like collage of human history of music, but done in a really fucking like a really like, oh, you can listen to this, it's fucking pop or whatever, it fits.
Speaking of creative projects, did I mention that Alex has like 15 other aliases that he also produces music for in his spare time? There's Blanco, which is his Latin pop reggae electronica alias, Vinter in Vegas, which is from his first album while in the United States, Data Crash, which is his hip-hop inspired alias. There's like a strictly Vinter alias, which is different from his self-alias Alexander Vinter. And look at all these other ones on his Wikipedia. I'm not going to listen through all this discography to tell you if any of these aliases I've never heard about are good. I just find it incredible that he's had such a prolific output, and this isn't even including his secret vault of unreleased tracks that he claims contains over 10,000 songs. Like, am I crazy in saying this guy is either insane or a genius? The more I dug in to figure out how many albums and songs Alex has actually released, the list continued to grow until I couldn't accurately talk about his discography without leaving out a large portion of his musical output, or just making a 13-hour video about everything he's ever made. Can you start to understand why I feel like I'm going crazy that no one besides a small group of diehard fans have ever talked about Savant? Here's this super unique, extremely prolific electronica musician, and yet the only people that talk about him are no one? Like, okay, there's a tiny subreddit that he has, and his music will occasionally pop up in super popular gaming videos from like the 2010s, like this Bergie Paul video. and only people as autistic as me have an intense obsession with his music, despite the fact that almost all the comments from his best songs have a spiritual level worshipping of the guy, and yet silence from the wider electronica scene, especially for some famous internet music reviewers. Here's what Alex has to say about his extreme musical output.
By what I just explained to you, but it's hard to explain. But I think fast when I do music.
You can talk about strategy of some of that stuff. I mean, that's...
Yeah. 12 albums in such a short time. It's very. It's because I could have made one album a year if I wanted to. You know, and I'm doing that kind of now. I'm just taking a lot of time making one piece of music because I want to focus on detail, perfection here and there. You know, so. Because now I'm in the spotlight. People are looking at me. People like Rob Swire and Deadmau5 and all these people are looking at me going like, oh, okay, who are you, you know? So I have to be really good now. I can't just, I have to be like, you know? So people are looking at me and judging. So I have to be perfect. So I'm taking more time with my music now. But when I started out, I was very like into like how much can I release before I die, you know? How much, you know? Because I've already, before I started releasing as Savant, I probably had like 10,000 songs already written since I was 9 years old. So at that time, I've done all genres you can imagine. Anything from anything to that. I love everything. I wanted to try to do everything. Of course, I've made mostly trance and metal music. I've got like 2,000 metal songs and 3,000 trance songs. It's like too much. So I'm done with those. I'm like, oh, no more. You know, so I want to do new stuff now, but with the Savant thing, it was always about like, I want to be remembered for a dude that did something no one else could do, because anyone can put out 12 albums in this amount of time I do, but it's about the quality too. It's not just the quantity. It's supposed to be a good song. It's supposed to be a good album, and the journey from beginning to the end, when you listen to it, the albums, there's supposed to be a journey. There's supposed to be a story. There's supposed to be like a movie in your head when you listen to it. Or at least something you feel. You can't just be like, skip that. It's just like that one. It's not about that. It's like the old school 80s rock albums where it was like an opera. It was like fucking, and then, and then, and it was a journey of styles. It was a journey of tempos. It was a journey of emotions. And like, for instance, Metallica album from the 80s, Master Puppets, or even Justice for All, they have these different songs that have, one's slow, one's like boom, boom, doo, doo, and one's like, and one's like, so they all have different tempos and genres, like to me, like they're different vibes. So, and these kids nowadays, they're just doing one thing. And like, or, you know, everybody's just doing the same thing, and I'm like, oh, this is so boring. So with the albums, I want to make that journey. I want to make that go from this to that to this, that, and wah, and then make many of those. Make a library of those, so people go like, that's impossible.
Instead of boring you all with another 12-hour breakdown of each and every album and their songs, I'd instead just like to focus on a single song, and use that as an example of why Savant's music is incredible instead. Hopefully after this we can better understand rationally why I love his music so much, and without further ado, let's listen to Ode to Joy. In my personal opinion, Savant's best melody. Ode to Joy swings hard right out of the gate, straight into its core melody, an 8-bit cacophony of joy from start to finish. With multiple mix-ups throughout, this 2-minute banger is emblematic of everything I love about Savant, his talent, and his approach to his work. He says he creates from the heart, and creates the song with the motif without all the right and proper music theory. Don't bore us with the chorus, he says. Just fuck it, test them out on the dance floor, and see what works. Out of all of Alex's discography, Ode to Joy is a song that I come back to again and again and again. It's the perfected melody that I can't seem to find fault in. Ode to Joy 2 is also a pretty great twist on this if you get a little bored of the first version. So what makes Savant's music unique or distinctly his? I'd argue it's his constant repeat of motifs in his music, like his use of the harpsichord, love of the organ, and just generally the way he incorporates classical music composition into his EDM tracks. It just gives his music a baroqueish flair that you can't really get elsewhere besides listening to music from Bach or Beethoven. His earlier work is full of these motifs too. Alchemist and Cult come to mind because they're such distinct Renaissance EDM influenced tracks with their bombastic harpsichords. It just makes you wonder, is this a 17th century musician brought back to life? There's something so satisfying about a musical mixture of classical and techno that it's just bringing the best of classical music and modern in such a fun way. He manages to effortlessly bridge the gap between digital and classical music that just works so well that when I call him EDM's forgotten Mozart, this is what I'm referring to. Catharsis, another one of my favorite songs, starts with these orchestral and larger-than-life violins until about halfway, where it suddenly switches into this bubbly techno breakdown that features one of his most stunning melodies to date. It goes from this to this. He's able to switch between these two genres so seamlessly that I'm just stunned every time I listen to it. Here's Alex describing his love of classical as well as the way he writes music for it.
When I started listening to classical music when I got older, I was like, wow, this is beautiful. All these instruments sound so cool and warm and rich and powerful. And it gives you that whoa sometimes, you know? So, and it's really expensive to get an orchestra to play for you, you know? It costs hundreds of thousands to get a full album recorded. So I just tried to find plugins on the computer and samples to like sounded like that. So really got to explore a lot of these classical instruments, like something called the cembalo or harpsichord, which is like that very plinky instrument, where it sounds like a harp, but very sharp piano, like a knife. Whoosh. So it's I like the sound of it because it's very clean. You can hear it through music. If you have a dubstep or a really hard like track, if you use some of those instruments, they go through that hardness so well because it's organic and it's different. Because all electronic music, everything's electronic, right? So, but if you put something real on top of electronic music, it shines through, like vocals, for instance, or guitar, or violin, or anything real, a banjo, for fuck's sake, anything works. But all those instruments, I wanted to put in electronic music because, first of all, kids don't know what they are anymore. They're dying, because everyone just wants to be a DJ, so nobody cares about classical music anymore. So tradition is dying. So that's also part of why I like them so much, and I want to portray them because I want people to know and remember what they were and how they were used, a little bit. I'm not a professional in classical at all. I'm just playing around.
With that out of the way, I really want to talk about what I think is Savant's best album. There's 20 of them, so it was a super tough decision to make, but thinking it over, it has to be Savant's 2014 Protos. I wouldn't say it's my most listened to, or the best of his average discography, but the incredible thing about Protos to me is that it's a masterpiece of where EDM could be if the genre only slightly loosened its grip on the constant raving and dubstep sounds and was willing to try something a little new and exciting. If you'll allow the indulgence, I'd really love to just go deep on Protos and what it brings to the table. Protos is Alex's 80s inspired space opera from his childhood. There are characters, emotional arcs, and kick-ass melodies. Alex says in an interview that Protos is what I would have watched on TV as a kid if it existed.
I got a totally different answer to that one.
Go for it.
My goal with music, I discovered my goal with music when I bought Discovery by Daft Punk.
because their goal and motive with that album was to discover their childhood again. And what I discovered after buying Discovery and discovering that was that I discovered that I wanted to discover my own childhood through the music. So what I did was I started to dig into the stuff I listened to when I was 4 years old. And that was 80s anime soundtracks, because that's what I used to rent at the video store. My town was fucking 10 years behind every other fucking city or big suburb. So I rented 80s cartoons, and the soundtracks in those were metal. There were rock and roll. They were big. They were orchestral. They had themes. They had goosebump melodies on them. And then after that, I started playing Nintendo, and the melodies and the chords and the beats and all that stuff stuck with me. It was so catchy. The biggest one for me was Zelda. Link to the Past on Super Nintendo. And when I listen to that, I get 10 ideas to make a song, because it just gives me an instant atmosphere I want to be in. And it might be the sound, or it might be a melody, or it might just be what I remember from playing it, and just what I wanted to achieve at that time. It's just going back into your fucking childhood. Because I remember growing up was fucking sucky. Sucked balls. Because you realize you have responsibility, you have to pay bills, you have to be social, you have to fucking meet people. It's tons of hazards fucking growing up. So I just wanted to go back to comfort and some really childhood feelings.
Protos was Savant's first fully vocal album. With 18 songs, the introductory Man of the Law is all about a space-traveling sheriff with punchy metal influences as well as sweet orchestral sounds. It's unlike anything he'd produced up to that point. It sets the tone so well and is such a graceful vocal performance that it changed everything I thought I knew about what an EDM artist could be. The next song, Prototype, brings more of the electronica that we've come to know and love from Savant, as well as showing off a lot of the 80s inspired melodies he's trying to bring to this project. Spaceship is both about traveling throughout the galaxy, in a spaceship obviously, but it's also about leaving everything you know behind for an adventure. To me, the subtext is really about Alex encouraging the listener to delve deeper into the world that he's building. Luckily, Rider in Red does this perfectly, with a World War II-esque voice line. There's even this sick-ass Ruby unofficial trailer based on the song.
From the mysterious reaches of infinity, a gigantic astral body hurtles towards the Earth to terrorize and seal the doom of an unprepared mankind.
Job for the Army. They've got the guided missiles, the nuclear warheads. Intercept and destroy it before it strikes.
A metallic vampire stalking the Earth.
Here comes the rider in red. Ride, ride, and soon you'll be dead. They'll chop off your head with evil steel. You kneel to the rider in red. Ride, ride, but soon you'll be dead. They'll chop off your head with evil steel. The last thing you will see is
This then leads directly into Fakers, which is a more metal electronica inspired song, which you guessed it, is about fake ass people. I love this little melodic spin at the end with these sweet violins and its warped electronica. This swan song then leads directly into Rise Up, which really takes its time to sweep you into the vocals. talking about overcoming adversity, and then aggressively switching into a dubstep-esque ballad. In only 4 minutes, it goes from sweet piano to aggressive, growly sounds, into sweet and plucky angelic vocals. Alex puts so much care into it. It just shines so much in this project. Next is Nebula, which is kind of a soundscape electronica song about a ship flying through a nebula, and it's pretty awesome to listen to while playing something like Faster Than Light. Although the album isn't actually split in two, I consider it 2 parts, with the second part starting off at Space Heart. Space Heart brings the punchy space opera sound back, while singing about raising your laser guns and following your love throughout space. With an accompanying rock ballad and plenty of unique electronic inserts, Space Heart really brings the space opera to Protos. Next we have Laser Sharks.
You know, I have one simple request, and that is to have sharks with frickin' laser beams attached to their heads. Cool!
This is by far my favorite track on the album. What's not to like about sharks with laser beams on their heads? Listening back, almost a decade later, it's kinda cheesy, but it just has so much heart, and it takes the space opera narrative so seriously that it only adds to the fun of the album. Laser Sharks is such a classic song on Protos that they even appear in a future game of his. Cry for Love is up next, and it's a disco-inspired melody, which is actually a fully realized vocal version of another song from a previous album, ISM. Samurai stars a featured character on the cover art. It's kind of this techno 8-bit metal anthem about a robotic samurai that slays anything in its way, with the only way to stop it by hacking it. It's pretty goofy, but it just has this kick-ass melody that makes it so great to re-listen to. Quest is this old-school Legend of Zelda-inspired melodic, and it completely sounds like something off of a game soundtrack from that era. Venom is another vocal anthem. It's really just about a venomous ex and dealing with that. Once we make it to Super Sheriff, the album is finally wrapping up the previous talk about the elusive sheriff.
Oh no, I'm so scared. What are we gonna do?
I will destroy you with all my mighty evil powers. Hold on there, Mr. Monster Man. Super Sheriff is in the house.
It kicks fucking ass. Sword of Destiny is also this super catchy 8-bit side-scroller type beat, and I fucking love it. It's the pure techno tracks between his vocal tracks that really sell Protos to me. Almost like I get to fill in the blanks of the lore with my own imagination. It's a super unique album in that way. Hit the Top is this Americanized version of Rise Up with the memorable line,
I keep on running for America.
It's super short and sweet. Aquarius reminds me a lot of Pirate Bay from Alchemist, a previous album. It has these super fun piratey sounds and boats creaking and seagulls cawing that has this cozy harbor kind of vibe in the beginning. Eventually transitions to coasting out to sea with a guitar solo and a lovely 8-bit goodness that we've come to expect from Savant. Finally, Beautiful World wraps up the album in a fantastical way, really hitting home the love and care Savant put into this project. I remember the first time I ever listened to this album and being completely blown away with what Savant had just put out. I didn't know an EDM artist could do something like this. It truly ruined other EDM artists for me when I realized that other musicians couldn't just do what Savant did. That they either didn't have the talent or the courage to break out of their traditional sounds that they locked themselves into. The incredible thing about re-listening to this album is just how each song continues to change throughout its runtime. Even songs I don't completely love change and evolve so much that there's sections that really get to me. Like before listening to Aquarius again, I remember being kind of bored, but it literally changes its melodies and motifs like 5 times that I realize it's a complete musical journey. It starts at the harbor, goes out to sea, has a battle or two, and then returns to harbor with this awesome childlike flute and seagulls squawking again, and I just never realized that. Protos comes together to weave this incredible narrative of a space savant traveling the galaxy, fighting dangerous villains and dancing all the while till their next destination. It's truly unlike anything I've ever listened to by an electronica artist. Just the way he seamlessly transitions from melody to melody, and although the lyrics can sometimes be pretty cheesy in my opinion, I really love the childlike vulnerability and just the overall aesthetics of the project. It wasn't anything his fans were expecting at the time, and yet to me, it's one of his most memorable and creative projects to date. Here's what Alex has been saying around what he's trying to do with music, and it's just super insightful about how he produced Protos.
I think that you're discovering new stuff and like people are like, what is this? I haven't heard it before. Where can we find it? Where can we find more? I think that feeling is so much better than just to sing along, you know? It's that opening the brain. I've actually found out what I'm doing. It's the opposite of what, for instance, trance DJ is doing. He's trying to put them into a trance with tribal rhythms, like it's like the old school backing the drumming around the campfire stuff, right? So I think that's what they're trying to do, and that's what people want to be in that state of mind where they're just in trance, where they're in that loop or whatever. I break the loop. I play music that you don't expect, you know, all that unpredictability is in there. Like I don't have that. build up every DJ has between the songs, so everybody knows what's coming, and like you can count down everything. It's like I don't play like that. I play very around with everything, so people get surprised a lot. But it's all about getting them to cheer, to jump, and to.
Savant isn't some nobody in the electronica scene. He's got 100,000 plus monthly listeners on Spotify, and a little bit more than that subscriber-wise on his YouTube channel. Despite that, he's barely a talking point from that era. The only example I could find from that time period was a tweet from deadmau5 where he said, "In fact, Savant Official is the change that EDM needs, if it doesn't sink itself entirely." The other compounding fact about him is that he's worked with some really impressive artists, mainly Mike Diva, who was commissioned to make multiple public service announcements for the LA Metro like this. He's also behind this wildly popular Trump parody commercial. Mike Diva is also the director behind the Cali 47 music video. More confusingly, Savant has also collaborated with Snoop Dogg and DMX in Get It, Get It. I honestly have no fucking clue how Alex got Snoop Dogg and DMX on this song, but it just makes me happy to watch. Good for you, Alex.
Hands in the air, this shit is crazy, cause I don't care. Stop, get it, pop my pain. Stop, get it, I'm doing my thing.
Looking at these collaborations, we might begin to form an idea about why Savant wasn't as popular back then, and why he's generally been left out of the modern electronica discourse. I'd argue in large part that it's because his lack of collaborations with other electronica artists, and in part because of his mental afflictions, which he has on occasion been known to be a little assholish or mean.
Yeah, talking about the fuck in my brain. Yeah, I have a fuck in the brain. So it affects my life probably a lot, but since I'm me, I'm not anybody else, I can't really see it from anybody else's perspective. I only have my perspective, so... but people tell me I'm grumpy a lot, I'm an asshole and all that stuff, I have bad days a lot. So I'm very emotional, that's it. I feel a lot of sadness and happiness at the same time. It's very crazy. So that is what the gift does for me, but what it doesn't do for me is make me happy or work with other people, or I can't really be social. It's very hard for me. I have to smoke a lot of weed to get to that level where I can be like comfortable and talk to people. And there's a lot of like I'm weird. Like yeah. There's a lot of pain and shit. But that's all good and stuff. Like, hey, pain is cool. But without pain, you can't see the truth. Is what I like to see.
Alex doesn't seem too concerned about his popularity or general influence on electronica music. He continues to do his own thing, and has been doing so for more than a decade. On the one hand, this is the biggest reason I continue listening and enjoying him as an artist. He's willing to try bold new projects, and blow your ears away time and time again. On the other hand, despite at least a new album or two since 2011, he effectively stopped touring around 2016. This has definitely affected the public's knowledge of him and his work. In a treasure trove Reddit AMA from 2020, he responds to the question of, "Can you tell me what you were like growing up?" Alex responds to this with a super insightful message. "My mind still goes 300 miles an hour, but I'm able to focus and filter more in public settings. Touring, crowds, and loud noises still freak me out though. I had massive anxiety touring. It was some of the most intense periods of my life, hence me not touring so much, or at all." This AMA is really insightful to Alex as a whole, and can explain the reasons behind his many aliases, as well as why he appears not to be super concerned about cultivating money or fame. He answers this question clearly to another commenter on the AMA. Maybe artists in general are content with making the same thing over and over, but in my case it's been a big handicap. Before Savant, my longest running projects were like 3 to 5 years tops. I like doing stuff and moving on. Savant became my bread and butter at some point, and it was a bittersweet thing to please people for money versus doing what I want and pissing people off. It still is. Not to sound bitter at all. I really enjoy what Savant is and has become. A lot of fun creations. I found a way to make it work in the end for me. Savant as a project might be a slave to its own successes, but that doesn't mean Alex hasn't branched out and tried to explore this creation in other ways.
Love to do other stuff than make music. I'm into art, philosophy, filmmaking, science.
So remember Owlboy? A quick refresher for those of you who have forgotten. Owlboy was a pixel art game released in 2016 following a 9-year release cycle by the Norwegian game company D-Pad Studios. The game was critically acclaimed, many critics comparing it to the retro masterpieces of the past like Castlevania Symphony of the Night and Metal Slug for its incredible pixel art style. The story was somewhat lackluster, but the game holds up today as a masterpiece of pixel art and traditional platforming. The most interesting thing about D-Pad Studios is that Owlboy was actually their second game released, the first being, as you could probably guess by now, a game based on Savant lore. Savant Ascent. Savant Ascent is a fuck ton of fun, an 8-bit bullet hell upward movement shooter where you play as the alchemist. The best thing happened in 2024 with an update to the base game called Savant Ascent Remix. This new game has all new music, a ton of different enemies, and a completely updated art style that just looks kick-ass in the current year. There's nothing too complex about the game. You can easily pick it up and beat it under an hour. To say the music is good is an understatement. I cried at the remix of Laser Sharks, one from a sense of nostalgia, and also the addictive gameplay to back it up. There's a subtle sense of heartbreak while I was playing that I didn't quite understand at the time, but reflecting on it again, it makes more sense. I felt this immense sadness that almost no one will play this game or even experience half of the incredible music within it. This is because the game, very enjoyably I might add, has you add music to your collection by playing the game and placing them within inside your DVD player, so you can listen to them later. Not only that, but all of Savant's iconography and lore is present in the game, just like the first. You fight Vario, the Laser Sharks, and the final boss of the game is the Samurai, which is from Protos, by the way. The game is such an interesting project because it's a general oddity for musicians to expand their creativity into new art forms like this. Looking at a list of musician-inspired games brings up loads of obvious cash grabs like 50 Cent Bulletproof and Michael Jackson's Moonwalker. Yet, Savant Ascent seems completely invested in not only making a great game, but a great Savant-inspired game. It's an incredibly fine line to walk between cash grab fan service devoid of any interesting gameplay and a standalone artistic project without Savant's name attached to it. Not only has D-Pad smashed it out of the park with Savant Ascent Remix, they've appealed to non-Savant fans as well, which is a massive achievement in its own right. The greatness of the game does add to the mystery of Savant. His music is great, the game is fantastic, and mostly crickets from general audiences. It's not even his entire project catalog, and yet he can't seem to catch major public attention. Something that always confuses superfans like me. Come to think of it, is there any other media that makes me feel like he should be more popular? Alex also does some pretty interesting stuff on his YouTube channel. As if there wasn't enough music for your tastes, we get to see on his channel and see these. There's Hustlers, Fabrics, Forsaken, a song Vinter says was written about his strained relationship with his father. Looking even further into his catalog, we see Twistex, Elephant, Rugal, and even America. They're just these gems for people who are super interested in finding them. When I was looking for some of the origins of these songs, I found an interview talking about Elephant and kind of the recording process behind it, which blew me away. Okay, so he makes a banger from start to finish just by pulling words out of a hat. He is literally a musical magician.
Hey, today we're gonna make a song. What we're gonna do is put notes I've written with different genres and styles and beats and flavors and all that stuff into a hat and pull them out, and they're gonna decide what we're gonna do today. So, first rule is decade. 70s. Rule 2, animal. Elephant. Rule 3, beat. 2-step. Now we're gonna pull out the BPM of this track. 110 BPM. Mellow. Alright, so we got mellow, elephant, 70s, 2-step, 110 BPM. Great, I got something going. Let's do this. Let's do the simple part first, 110 BPM.
Over the span of 2 hours, you literally get to watch Alex create something better than 90% of EDM at the time.
2.5 hours, I think, approximately, to make all the changes. And I felt good with it, added all the stuff I needed. I could spend 2 more weeks. It's like a work of painting, you never know when it begins and ends, you just have to figure it out.
What the actual fuck? How did you do this, Alex? Watching this clip brought up an idea very clearly for me. This guy's a genius, right? I can't think of a better way to describe this. Looking at the random YouTube music, the 2 games, and the decade plus of musical output, it's so obvious at how brilliant Savant is. He's clearly mastered musical software, as well as balancing his vision of music without cashing out. He's managed to achieve something his contemporaries haven't seemingly been able to do. Stay fluid and flexible on the projects he puts out, to the often anger of his fanbase. It's a pretty common sentiment among commenters and fans alike to say they miss the Alchemist days, which to me is missing out on the other better albums in his discography since then. To be honest, Alchemist isn't even a top 5 contender for the best Savant album. Jester is a better Alchemist in almost every way, and it's from 2018. The willingness to disappoint older fans to try new stuff is what makes Savant such an exciting artist to listen to. It can even occasionally lead to projects that wake fans up to that greatness. For me, that project has to be Cassette. Cassette is a 7-song musical project where Alex remixes the same song 7 times. Cassette was when I completely woke up to the fact that Savant was trying to be more than just another EDM artist, but instead trying to show his incredible musical talent. If Protos was a gateway for experimenting with new genres, Cassette is a massive acceleration in that direction. I wouldn't say each is incredible, or even that they're Savant's best songs, but I just have so much respect for a musician who's willing to test themselves and share a bold new attempt at this many genres. The costumes are pretty great too. I mean, just look at these. Cassette is emblematic for Alex's aspiration for music. Returning to the AMA, he states pretty clearly that he's never held on to an alias for this long. And it seems like if he didn't try and branch out, he'd go a little crazy. Cassette to me shows how talented Alex is. How he really doesn't need to make EDM and be successful. He just appears to genuinely love the electronica sound and has continued to add his mark in a positive way all these years. If I were to make a claim about why I love these kinds of projects, I say that it's because a great EDM artist should harness the new powers of music creation, really leaning into the new, unlimited choices that are now given to them, and trying new and exciting sounds. With the gift of software, they're now able to produce sounds physically impossible before, turning images into sounds, creating new motifs from digitally invented instruments, and reimagining stale sounds with unlimited musical creativity. I think Alex accomplishes this where others seem to give up and pump out mediocre stuff. The biggest issue I've seen with modern EDM, and the genre as a whole, is just how generic and stale it sounds. No one dares to innovate or change their sounds because they risk losing their previous fan base, a mistake that holds them back from creating new and exciting stuff. Instead of EDM being taken seriously, it's been marked as a genre plagued by overly repetitive looping, boring drops as a replacement for good musical design, and not something worth analyzing at all. When the best electronica coming out today is from 100 gecs or Charlie XCX, you know there's a fucking problem for the genre as a whole. Maybe EDM was inherently a tainted genre, where trying to become an electronica artist forces you to adopt all the boring, generic motifs of others.
After that thing took off and everyone started to make music and everyone was a DJ and everyone could do anything and all that kind of stuff, I guess I really stopped listening to what was happening. I don't think there's anyone out there that I really go like, I would go to a show and watch that shit. No, I wouldn't. Because I feel like everyone's, like, when you don't know what to do, you just copy the people around you. That's how humans work. If you don't know what to do, you're just, what's everyone else doing? Okay, I'll just mimic. Okay, that's normal, I guess. Everyone's just scared. Everyone's scared, so they just pretend to do whatever. So there's no one out there that has the balls to like be crazy enough to like mix everything into one bottle. So I'm really angry at everything right now. That's what I am. So I don't really have anybody right now that I'm really looking towards like an idol or anything like that. I go like, if you wanna change stuff, you have to like go all that worshiping, and let inspiration come from. Oh, that went out of stock footage. So you have to let inspiration come from other places too, not just other people. Like inspiration comes from watching or listening to music that isn't in the same scenes. Because I think that if you listen too much to the own stuff you make, you tend to like copy too much, or you tend to like be influenced too much. And also, you get like it. And at this point, if you listen too much to electronic music while you're making it, what happens is that if nobody else innovates, you get stuck too. You get stuck in it because you'd feel like everything, the dance music scene is dead because nobody else is doing it cool. You should change it. Why are you waiting for someone else to change it, you asshole? Everyone's complaining about it. Everyone's so stagnant and stuck. Well, you can change it anytime you want to. Like everyone, all these big names, they complain all the time about how stagnant the scene is and shit like that, but they don't realize that they have the power to just do this and it's changed, you know?
But can an artist go too far in their desire to break free of their genre, alienating even their most die-hard and open-minded fans? I've just spent a ton of time talking about how much I really like the guy's output, but there is a slight blemish on Savant's discography, and if you're already a fan, you know which album I'm talking about. Just when Savant was ready to leave behind House, barely releasing Calypso, a Blanco album, and a Savant album Jester, which is for sure better than Alchemist, he dropped Mortals. Mortals is Savant's 16th album, and it isn't a Savant album in the traditional sense. There's no EDM, house, trap, dubstep, or any heavy electronica of the sort here. As Vinter states in the description, it's a lot of music, but it's not a bunch of random tunes in order, it's a musical journey. I wrote a lot of script, dialogue, character development, even started drawing a comic book for it to just get the journey to feel right. It's very much inspired by the Marvel and DC universes. It's a faux movie soundtrack, so it can be your own movie in your imagination. Mortals is, to my knowledge, Savant's least popular and enjoyed album, and for good reason. It doesn't share anything in common with my enjoyment of his music. There's no extremely catchy melodies, the creative liberties of homemade sounds, and the general upbeatness are all absent from this project. I have a pretty strong aversion to a 2.5-hour orchestral when I have a great selection of the best EDM to choose from. There's loads of people on the subreddit and elsewhere who think it's by far his weakest album, and I'd have to agree that it's his weakest EDM album by far. But wait, are there any redeeming qualities of Mortals? I've just spent some time talking down on an album I don't really care about, but honestly, I'd actually like to Uno reverse my opinion and say that Mortals is incredible, and I'll just have to take a moment to really get into why. Mortals is a terrible Savant album, but that's because it's not a traditional Savant album. It's not EDM, or house, or dubstep, or even really electronica. I can't find it in my heart to slight an artist who's making great effort to try something radically different from their fan base's desire for regurgitated and rehashed sounds from his previous albums, especially after listening to it again after a long time. It has so much passion, it's mastered very well, And even if I wouldn't normally listen to Mortals in the car or gym, whipping it out for a long session of D&D was super enjoyable. I honestly believe that if Mortals had a more Savant-inspired album cover, it wouldn't have been so critically panned. But that also would have taken the heart and soul out of the album. In fact, this foray into orchestral soundtrack music resulted from a previous project from the movie soundtrack The Black Room in 2017, which was entirely produced by Alex. Even after release, undeterred from the hate and dismay from his fanbase, he then went on to produce the soundtrack for Insert Coin, a documentary about arcade games, and it fits that movie perfectly. Even his worst album resulted in some fantastic work fitting for their genre. You know, Mortal's album art was done by Vinter, mastered and produced by Vinter, and released on his own label. If Mortals was Alex's last album, that definitely would have tarnished his reputation and my perception of his discography. But since then, 3 more Savant classics have been released.
Hello sir, welcome to the Fantano EDM support group.
So what do you guys want to talk about today?
Yeah, let me tell you something. I've got a real stick up my ass about Anthony Fantano. All these years, all these fucking years, not a peep about Savant. Oh, but King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard released another new album that sounds exactly like the last one. Go fucking dive into that one. Can't wait to see another 8 out of 10 on another fucking lousy EDM album. This album is derivative. This album is actually pretty good. You did good here, Fantano. This album is the most boring piece of shit I've ever listened to! Fuck
Somebody get the nurse to sedate this patient.
Shut the fuck up!
You don't understand shit. You want to talk about repetition? Your shitty ass YouTube channel is one shitty review after another. That's repetition. You don't know fucking shit about this shit. You can
Suck
go fuck yourself.
my dick,
You gave shitty
you
reviews
fuck
to.
face.
Fuck you, Anthony fucking fart face.
Fuck you, fuckhead.
From my perspective, Fantano and critics at large don't get EDM. And it makes me sad because this genre has incredible artists and musicians that should be more well known, but instead the internet discourse around EDM has been hard focused on incredibly fucking bland, milquetoast electronica shit. The Needle Drops review of Against All Logic 2017 to 2019 is my fucking hate watch. It's just an album of 9+ minute long loops with minimal changes, and if you think Mortals is a lousy album, just wait until you hear this one. It's incredibly derivative and super lazy. If this is what Fantano thinks qualifies as an 8 out of 10 for an EDM album, you know all of his other electronica opinions are dog shit. I'm being hyperbolic here, but I really do see this kind of discourse about electronic music online, where it seems the only value in it is for raving or trance music, and not as a legitimate genre that should be taken seriously. I think about the potential fans, people who might enjoy Savant's music, but are instead put onto musicians like Marshmello and Zomboy, thinking that this is all there is to the genre. It's a damn shame because even now, Savant's best work, what I think of as the shining example of a masterpiece of electronica, is in a game only a couple thousand people will play. The album that should define his discography has been tucked away, only to be listened to by the most hardcore of his fanbase. I've talked a lot about Savant, and by now you could probably guess that he's unequivocally my favorite artist. But what does that even mean? Enjoyment of art is a very subjective experience, and I hope that if I talk shit about any artist in this video that you care about, that you can forgive me. Or Anthony Fantano, I'm just joking, I really enjoy the Needle Drop, please no hate, please no hate. I honestly find a lot of the stuff from Igloo Ghost and Skrillex, even Deadmau5, pretty compelling. But I also just feel the rave creeping back into this music. Stuff to just pop Molly to and dance your clothes off, but never to really enjoy for its own artistic merits and never analyzing it deeper. Music permeates our lives. It's our cinematic soundtrack of the minutiae of our existence. It's able to connect us, and it draws boundaries around what is good and what isn't. Is it an emotional thing? Beyond the intellectual, I love the melodies and harmonies. I love the way the music transforms every time I listen to a song I've heard 1,000 times already. Not because the song has changed, but because I have. Savant's music to me is very personal. It's accompanied me through my most emotional experiences of motivation, creativity, imagination, as well as heartbreak, loss, grief. Maybe that's what it means to have a favorite artist. Not just someone whose music you enjoy, but someone whose music grows with you, who you deeply identify with, and the ways you grow together. Savant is such a special musician because he does that for me time and time and again. It's honestly inspiring the ways in which he continues to grow and evolve, even in his 30s. He's now married, he just had a kid, and he continues to pump out the best EDM I've ever heard. Doing research for this video has both been an exciting exploration into Vinter's discography and career, as well as immensely tragic and the reveal of his declining popularity and a real lack of discourse in general about him. It's so disheartening to see such a talented and creative artist be relegated to obscurity, left to be discarded like his contemporaries at the time, without anyone else really commenting on his prolific output. While writing this, Vinter's been teasing the release of 3 new albums from his long-awaited Hex series, with a couple of new songs on his social media channels. They're pretty good. He's already planning on a return to touring, and a Savant Ascent remix was released this year. I'm hopeful of a Savant and even a Blanco full-blown return that's able to put a massive spotlight on him once again, revealing just how incredible Savant really is, a decade plus after Nina was released. Looking back at the 2010s, it was truly the golden age of electronica music. The mavericks in the public psyche and the world of EDM were garnering loads of attention, which is now all but evaporated. EDM as a mainstream genre is dead, but only because its sounds, motifs, and production qualities have all been incorporated into every genre of music, transitioning out of the infancy of dubstep and into modern music styles like hyperpop. Songs released today are created on computers, recreated in studio if they need specific sounds, and then mastered on a computer. It's safe to say that almost all music today is electronic music, designed in Music Maker Studio, post-produced on audio synthesizers, and processed digitally. The genres blend into 2 distinct categories of digital and live acoustics, for all intents and purposes is dead. I can only hope that electronica in general can continue to grow into the mature, unique, and stunning musical form that it's destined to become. If we don't support artists trying to push those boundaries, we'll end up with the most boring and bland electronica mainstream has to offer. I hope Savant can be that artist. Hey, thanks for watching! We're at the end of the video now, and with that out of the way, what should you listen to by Savant? Here's kind of a short list of all of the best songs from all of his albums, and if you like any of those songs, please make sure to leave a comment and like the video if you found your new favorite artist. And thank you.